with the strategic objective to enhance professionalism in the mining and petroleum industry across the West African South region. We are currently in 6 West African countries. We're still opening chaptership in other countries as well. The focus of WAIMM is to enhance professionalism, provide exceptional leadership in science and industry, provide high quality professional input into industry and the society, and also to provide career and professional development. The WAIMM Distinguished Lecture Series is a WAIMM membership benefit, and it is aimed at knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer, also to drive policy changes, and above all, networking.
Despite this mining and mineral policy that we have still been unable to realize the diversification in our mineral economy. And the question I ask is it because we lack the capacity to develop other minerals, or our experience is so steep in gold that we are unable to go into other areas to develop minerals that are of relevant use to our economy? Do we lack initiative or capacity to act as professionals? Or is it the usual nice talk and shelf it that we are doing? I hope not. I am of the view that these concerns raised will be addressed as the speakers interrogate the complexities in the process and measure our capacity to assist the state realize its diversification agenda. I hope the keynote lecture, amongst others, will address our challenges and pick our resolve to make our mineral resource utilization for economic development a better and sustainable strategy this time around. Our guest speaker is a native of Accra in the Ashanti region. He's a professional who cut his umbilical cord at the Obuasi mines. I've known him closely to about 30 years. And he had his pre-university education in Ghana. Mr. Antwi, you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, President of the West Africa Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, Honorable Sam Akudetu, member of the Council of State, colleagues from the investment sector, financial sector, representatives of the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy from the University of Mines and Technology, fellow miners, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to meet and interact with my countrymen and other foreigners who may be in the room today. I would like to congratulate the leadership and all members of WAIMM for the progress made towards professional development, including the ongoing efforts to write a code for mineral resources reporting for West Africa. I encourage WAIMM to take it further and convince governments within the sub-region to legislate so that any mining company going through the stock exchanges in West Africa will use this code. Today's lecture, I'm going to cover a few things: mineral policy and investment, supply dynamics, creating project value, cost competitiveness, infrastructure adequacy, project funding, jobs creation, ongoing value addition initiatives, one of which the Prof touched on, and some action plans for WAIMM. Before I do that, I want to give you some market updates. So what I've done here is to take 3 minerals, nickel, zinc, and gold, and look at the cyclical nature of commodity prices. As you can see, it goes up and down. But if you look at 2017, 16 to 2017, at the very tail end, we see that even though there is a bit of noise up and down, the trend is all upwards. And that is an indication that commodity prices are now returning to normalcy. We also look at other indications, what we call pipeline activity index. Pipeline activity index is the number of projects announcing significant drill results, exploration financing, initial resources, and positive project milestones. And as you can see, there's a positive trend going from 2016 to 2017. Another thing that we look at is exploration budgets for junior miners. In 2012, it peaked at about $21 billion. Then it's been trending down since 2012. But if you can see, 2017 is starting to go up. And that's a positive sign because the geologists are now getting back to work. This chart didn't come up well, but I personally use it. The unemployment rate of the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. And to give you a bit of context, this institution has about 13,000 members globally. So we are the mining engineers, mineral processing engineers, metallurgists, environmentalists, and so on. If you look at the 2012 unemployment rate of the global members, it's about 1.7% compared with the unemployment rate of Australia of 5.2%. Since then, the unemployment rate has been going up. In fact, it was 10.9% in 2013 and peaked at 16.2% in 2015. That's when we saw the massive retrenchments across the industry. 2016 saw a bit of improvement, and I don't have the update for 2017, but it's also treat all these with cautious optimism, in the sense that a number of factors can undo all the gains that the industry is gaining now. One of them is the Chinese market reforms, instability in global politics, the trade tariffs that we've seen, emerging market volatility, future of the North American Free Trade Agreement, and what I call over-investment challenge. And what is over-investment challenge? When we have an extended period of low price environment, there are a number of implications. We see mine closures and curtailments. We see reductions in expansion capex spend, reductions in sustainable, there's a focus more on profitable tons, what we call resource conservation. And these lead to lower production. When that happens, demand outstrips supply, and then prices begin to go up. When prices go up, it gives confidence to investors, and as a result, a lot of projects that were struggling to get online come online. Then there's an oversupply situation, supply outstrips demand, and then the price begins to fall. And that's why we see these oscillations back and forth in addition to other market forces. Let's put the market on the side. The industry has also gone through a series of operational challenges, and one of them is equipment productivity. Across all continents, we've seen that trending down. And the reasons are, underground mines are getting deeper, and therefore there are geotechnical challenges. In open cuts, pits are getting deeper, so the cycle time to haul waste and ore to the crushers and waste dumps are getting longer. In fact, in new ore bodies that are being found, we're seeing declining grades. And this example is just for copper grades. The other challenge we've seen is what we call capex escalation. What does it mean? If you look at 2006, capex escalation was about 32.5%. What it means is, if your bankable feasibility study says you need $100 million to develop a mine, by the time you finish the construction, that budget of 100 million would have gone to 132 million. The trend has been coming down. 2014 was about 8.4%, but the industry has a lot of improvements to do. So why do projects fail? In fact, PwC did a study, and the study realized that the technical guys, the mining engineers, geologists, only contribute to 8% of why projects fail. 92% are due to managerial aspects, nothing to do with technical issues. Lack of resources, lack of proper planning, and so on. But the industry has seen these challenges and responded positively through operational improvement initiatives and financial discipline. If we look at the free cash flow of the top 40 mining companies in the world, in 2015, the free cash flow was $13 billion. This improved to $40 billion in 2016. Remarkable progress. If you look at the net debt, which is the money owed to financial institutions and banks to construct our mines, in 2015, it was $239 billion. By 2016, this has come down to $202 billion. I don't have the numbers for 2017, but indications are that that will also decrease. With this, let me now talk to you about the challenges that developing countries face in the exploitation of its minerals. One of them is transforming resource wealth into value addition projects that support sustained development and jobs. I had a strong debate with an African minister on this issue, and then he told me that he's assured his constituents that he's going to create a certain number of jobs through value addition initiatives in the mineral sector. So I asked him the question: if, for instance, you are converting iron ore to steel, and the steel, the cost of production is more than the steel price, will you still do it, even though you're losing money? Will you do it for the sake of job creation? He said no. So I said, then let's change the focus. The focus should be return on shareholders' funds, margins, profits, and then the job creation becomes an upside. One of the challenges also is policy implementation, the political will to do projects. There is also the infrastructure challenge, especially rail and ports for bulk commodities, lack of specialized skills and technology, scarcity of domestic supply, limited access to international capital markets. So I'm going to take you through 3 case studies. First is in the Middle East, in a country where there isn't much mining expertise like Ghana. The investment rationale is to diversify the economy from oil income dependence, because oil's contribution to GDP is around 44%, and their strategy is to reduce it to 22% by 2020 by harnessing the full resources in fishing, mining, manufacturing, and tourism. In this country, 60% of the population are under the age of 30. So there's the importance of diversifying this economy from oil and gas. So we sat down and we said, funds are not coming into exploration because they've been concentrating on oil and gas for decades. Nobody is looking at mining. So what do we have to do differently? Now, I'm not a fan of government-run operations, but in this instance, I said you either do nothing or the government needs to step in. So we created a government-owned mining investment company to expedite exploration and mining investments. And this company was formed in 2016 with a competent management team and board of directors. Through 4 government funds, we've injected $160 million for phase 1, and another $100 million will be raised in phase 2 through public listing. The first task for this company was to assess the geological potential of the country. And they engaged a company called Kenex in Australia and a technical mining consultancy on information value chain. Kenex combines spatial data and knowledge to manage and target more effectively and use predictive modeling to identify prospective areas. In the 6-month study, it helped identify geological potential leading to concession applications in silica, dolomite, copper, chrome, limestone, and gypsum. And some of the tools that Kenex uses, the information gathered, as I shared with the Ghana Geoscience last year, fossils, linears, historical mines, horizons, and so on. Now, after the geological prospectivity study, they had to conduct market studies to assess supply-demand dynamics and competitiveness in regional and global markets. So based on the geological prospectivity studies and the market studies, the regulator, which is the equivalent of the Minerals Commission, released exploration blocks to the government mining holding company. So it's 2 government mining holding companies, 2 government agencies working hand in hand. And the rationale is to do the initial de-risking to early stage exploration to JOC compliant indicated resource. Once we achieve indicated resource, which was achieved just about 2 months ago in one block. We then invite potential investors. We did that because if we don't do that, the investors were not coming. So we've taken the initial risk, and therefore we are in a position to put all this information in an information memorandum and bring in joint venture partners to help us with the feasibility studies, the optimization, mineable reserves, mine planning, and so on. Now, these are bulk commodities like bauxite, manganese. So the key to this is logistics. The government formed a company called ASEAD to look at what we call mineral railway line, to link it to the resource. So that helps ensure that the FOB cost of the port is competitive, because you are using an efficient transport system. You're not trucking, you are doing railway lines. We also have to ensure that we are competitive into the Indian and the other Asian markets. Therefore, we lined up a shipping company, also owned by ASEAD. So there are 3 links: the mining, the rail, and the shipping. And there's a steering committee of these 3 that are aligned and meet on a weekly basis to make sure that information presented to investors cover all the basics: mining, rail, and shipping. In addition, this company also takes equity interest in projects that are struggling to get money for development. There are a number of companies that have finished bankable feasibility studies, but they can't achieve financial close to start construction. The company moves in and injects the cash, but it's based on technical and commercial viability. It has to meet certain economic thresholds. One of the projects that the minister charged me to do is to look at the government mining company that had been struggling for about 10 years to get the project going. The first thing I did was to do a gap analysis, brought in an Australian company to de-risk the project to an indicated resource. That cost us about $2 million. When we finished and we put all the information, we did a pre-feasibility studies, and we put the information in an information memorandum, we got 45 international and domestic investors which expressed interest. A month ago, just in February, we signed the agreement with one of the international players to take 51% equity in the project. So government holds 49%, this company holds 51%. Now, if we had not done this, nobody would have moved into this project. The company also has taken a 40% equity stake in a copper project with a domestic player to explore and develop copper blocks. Other transactions are ongoing. So why copper? What is the copper story? Why were we so interested in copper? Because the country has a smelter and refinery for copper, which is about 30 years old and not performing well. It also has a concentrator. So our rationale is to replace the smelter and refinery with a new one. And to do that, you need to prove up reserves in the mining side. So that's the focus. That the mining holding company is putting cash to get the copper mines going. And then we are going to build another concentrator to have 2. We replace the smelter refinery. Even if the reserves are not big enough, we'll have a little portion coming from overseas. What comes out of the smelter refinery is copper cathodes, what is used for copper rods and other applications. And then that goes into further downstream, copper cables. So it is the entire value chain. That's what exactly the prof was saying. Take the whole value chain, all in country, to generate jobs and contribute to GDP. We are also developing a resource city. And what the government decided to do is to create a special economic zone for this particular area. The rationale was to move populations from urban areas into these sparsely populated areas. This area in particular is close to key markets in Asia and Africa, including India. It's got a very large industrial minerals resources. The government has finished the construction of the port and a railway line to link the country to GCC is under studies. As I said, large resources. I did a study for the government and identifies all the key minerals: limestone, dolomite, clay, and shale. The government created this zone as a special economic zone, and it gave them the powers to grant mining licenses, exploration licenses, and so on. So you don't go to Minerals Commission. It's a one-stop shop, manned and operated under the free zone. If you want a mining concession, you go there, you don't go to the equivalent of the Minerals Commission. It gave tax exemption for 30 years for any investor coming in, free repatriation of profits and capital. And if you go there now, when I was there about 3 years ago, there was nothing. Buildings, constructions, it's not just minerals, we are building an oil refinery as well. There's oil terminals, central utility services. Whole industrialization is going on right now. In fact, Oman Oil Company by itself will be spending over $15 billion in this particular area. We are also building another resource city too, called Menji Shuamir. We just finished the exploration drilling for indicated resources to the tune of close to 1 billion tons in various minerals. We have invited investors to come in because miners do not necessarily do value addition. Miners are miners. Only few companies mine and do value addition. You have to find the players with expertise to do value addition. So there are two links. Minerals Development Oman is linking the mining to the value addition players, and therefore we've got people or investors who are coming and express interest to do magnesium, ceramics, and so on. To drive all this industrialization is solar salt, very key. Why is it key? Solar salt can generate caustic soda, soda ash, you can use it for your oxide, alumina, silica related downstream, and so on. So we have revised a study to look into solar salt downstream applications. So that's the mining side. And then we said, we're now going to look at metals. What can we do in the metals phase? So we engaged a company in London to look at all metals, from zinc, copper, tin, everything. And then we gave them specific parameters: efficient use of energy, employment generation per unit of energy consumption. When they did the study, as you can see, aluminium and steel creates a lot of direct and indirect jobs in terms of gas usage. And they have relatively low gas requirements compared to other segments such as LNG, urea, and methanol. So, what was the investment rationale? High employment generation, strong local and regional demand driven by high infrastructure projects in the country and the sub-region, high downstream potential, unique products identified, wider presence across the value chain, improving competitiveness. So, we said phase one, we will concentrate on aluminium and steel. The challenge is we don't have commercially viable feedstock, the iron ore and the bauxite. So we explored the economic merits of sourcing feedstock from overseas. So we looked at a number of options for feedstock security. Option one was to invest in overseas mines by taking a minority stake and link that equity stake to offtake agreements. What it means is, if we take 30% equity in an overseas operations, we negotiate for the right to take 30% of the product. We also back it up with long-term offtake agreements. So it's not just talk. The investments are happening. We've invested in the projects in Canada, which has iron ore and ilmenite, which we can use for steel and titanium. We've invested in Congo for potash, for fertilizer security. We've invested in Spain for uranium, for energy security. And we are exploring a number of options for bauxite, Guinea, Australia, Madagascar, and Brazil to ensure diversity of supply. So what have we done on the ground in metals? In the context of steel, we've put out a pelletizing plant. At the moment, the iron ore is coming from Brazil. To capture operational and business synergies, we are using our own ships, some of the biggest ships in the world. So it goes to Brazil, it brings the iron ore, it's pelletized, and it's sold to markets. By 2020, we will have invested in iron ore mines so that we have our own iron ore. We will have gone further downstream to steel and further related downstream. In the aluminium context, The aluminum is on the ground right now, producing about 380,000 tons. We've gone further into rolling mills. By 2020, the rationale is we will have invested in bauxite mines, the alumina refinery will be in place, and there will be the full value chain. Bauxite, alumina, aluminum, rolling mills, and so on. Driving all this, as I said, not much expertise in the countries, so training and development is key. In fact, only about 6 months ago, the head of exploration hired him from Australia, a guy with 30 years experience. So we bring in expatriates to guide the minerals and metals development. And therefore, there is the need for succession planning to train the locals. We have started graduate programs, including international exchange programs. When we invest overseas, we negotiate with the companies to send some of our graduates for 2 years, 3 years experience in those operations. The government has also initiated what we call a CEO program, led by reputable European universities. What they do is they pick individuals with potential to go into management from the private sector and public sector, and they put them through these programs on a yearly basis. As part of the program, they are given projects. They divide them into groups, and they are given projects, real projects, challenges in the country, and they work on with sponsors. So I'm sponsoring the mining division to look into silica and their application for industries. Just about a month ago, I introduced a course called Mining and Geology Fundamentals for Non-Miners in Management. It's the chief accountants, so that they understand the basics of mining, the high-level terminologies. What is ore, what is waste, what is stripping ratio. So when they're doing the work, they have a fair understanding of the mining terminologies. In the petroleum sector, contractors contribute 1.2% of their total contract value for development of locals. All these initiatives is to ensure that locals manage their resources over time. The last bit is the project funding. How do we fund our projects? We've talked to a number of investors and we know what they want. The days are gone when you just announce a resource and have 200 million tons. Now investors want to see that you comply with one of the international codes. We are using the JOC standard because I happen to live in Australia and I understand the JOC code. There are other codes that you can use. We ensure that the projects are in the first to second quartile on the global commodity cost curve. And I'll touch on that a little further. Infrastructure and utility solutions is part of the equation. Rail, ports, low energy price. We ensure that companies coming in have the reputable international experience. So if you look at our aluminum plant, the operator is Rio Tinto. And Rio Tinto is not just an operator, they are also an equity investor. So they put money in the project. They have the skills, they have the technical excellence, marketing, and so on. If you look at the pelletizing plant, we have Valley, one of the biggest iron ore miners in the world. They run it, they have 70%, and the government has 30%. So we look for companies with strong management and a track record for project delivery, because if a bank is going to give you money, you want to make sure that you can deliver. That allows us to put equity. We put in about 40%, and we go to the banks, and we take 60% of debt into the projects. We also look into future public listing. So what has been the critical success factors? Securing energy sources for value addition. And in this instance, we presented to the government a strong business case on energy utilization. Because the minister says, why should I give you the gas when there are other industries also competing for the gas? And therefore, we undertook a robust study to demonstrate to the minister that this is an efficient use of the gas. As I said, we are solving the infrastructure link head-on, billions of dollars. And we are doing the necessary studies to ensure that investors come and invest under a PPP arrangement on the rail link. Return on investment is justified through robust technical and economic viabilities. So we don't use it, we don't do the project because we just want to create jobs. Job creation is just an upside. The regulator is working hand in hand with the government company, is issuing what I call pre-approved blocks for investments. What it means is Rather than the investor coming in to apply for exploration permit, mining license, you get all the pre-approvals in place and invite the investors. One of the challenges has been social license to operate community issues. So at the exploration phase, we start engaging the communities. We don't wait until we are going into construction. There's dialogue. There's no firm commitments, but we tell them if the project goes ahead, 5% of the profit will be on corporate social investments in the communities. And we assure them that these projects will be publicly listed so that moms and dads can buy shares in the company and also enjoy the dividends of the projects. As I said, robust projects, and therefore we are able to get 60% of the funds through the banks. So now let's turn to Canada. What did we do? We invested in a project that has iron ore, titanium, and vanadium. 3 elements. So the state government saw this and said, no, we will not allow you to export all this. We want value addition. Therefore, they put equity into the project. So the government became an owner, part owner of the project. And they put a very strong lady on the board of directors. Anytime we go to board meetings, there's a crash. I'm looking at my shareholders' interest, economics. He's looking at jobs creation, value addition. And there's therefore this conversion. But at the end of the day, we impressed on her that the project should be commercially, technically viable before we look at the various upsides. So if we talk about project economics, when we did our due diligence on the project and we took just the iron ore, you see that the bar was here, $64 per ton. At that stage, iron ore prices was about $80 per ton. And then I told the chairman of the board that being in the third quartile is very dangerous, so we should do something. We introduced the byproducts, the titanium, the vanadium as byproducts, and then did a feasibility study based on that. The economics improved to Q1 when we did that. And therefore, it was very easy to get the funding. But the challenge in this project was not the funding, was the social license. In fact, there are estimates that about $50 billion of mining projects have stalled because of community resistance to projects. And therefore, we have to tackle the social license issue. The issue here is the project is in a historically gold mining town. And these gold mines have run out of reserves. So the youth have left the town and gone into mining areas. So this time the state government said we will never make that mistake. I've never met very smart lawyers. They engaged the smartest lawyers to negotiate. So we signed what we call impact and benefits agreement between the company and the community. And that agreement looked at sourcing of labor from the community, integration, advancement and retention measures, social and cultural matters, environmental matters, financial matters. There was an implementation committee and a dispute resolution mechanism. We left the community with the option to invest in the project just as the state has done. And as I speak, they've put in about $10 million into the project and they have a seat on the board of directors. The advantage for this is they initiate and they push for the approvals. The authorization to construct, the mining licenses are all pushed by the community because they want the project to happen. That's how we tackle it. In the United States, it was a bit different. The challenge was environmental because we were mining coal, feeding into power plants with BHP. And the challenge was the community wanted the land because it was close to the indigenous communities to be reclaimed to approximate original control, which means bring it back to where the land was before you started mining. So before you mine, you do your survey and understand the control. And when you finish, you need to fill it back and plant the trees. The way to overcome this is, and at that stage, I was the reclamation engineer. So we have to do reclamation plans and present it to the state government through the Ministry of Environment to get their endorsement. Once you get the endorsement, then we take it on TV to explain it to the people in simple terms. We sensitize the communities with our strategies. One of the things that I did was every Wednesday I'll put 3 hours down to invite high school students. Because it's very difficult to bring in moms and dads to do mine tours. And the strategy was, if they are convinced, they will convince their parents. So on one occasion, when they come like that, I'll put them in a lecture room and show them simulations, how we strip off the topsoil and stockpile, and then we do the drilling and blasting, load and haul, they see it all on the computer. Then we take them to the pit to see the interactions of the equipment, the loaders and the shovels and the trucks. Then I give them some refreshment and take them to areas that we've mined and reclaimed. On one occasion, a very smart geography student asked me, "This is too good to be true. Are you sure you mined this and you planted these trees? I want evidence." So okay, I said, "You're a geography student, you understand coordinates?" He said, "Yes." We took the GPS and we took the coordinates of the area. And then I showed him the mine plans for the area and pictures. So I also challenged him. I said, "You are going back to the pit, you are going to take pictures, and in 3-4 years, I want you to come and see, take the coordinates, and come and check how it's been reclaimed." 2 weeks after that, I got a call from the parents to come for dinner. When I went, the parents said, "You've created a problem. And the problem is our son wanted to do civil engineering. Now after the mine visit, he wants to do mining engineering because he thinks it's interesting." This guy is now a senior mining engineer. He's graduated in Canada. So mining is not as bad as people think. It's very interesting. So now let's turn to the Ghana perspective. The African Mining Vision was formally launched in 2009, specifically aimed at promoting the role of extractive resources sector as a catalyst for economic development and structural transformation across the continent. And the primary objective is a transparent, equitable, and optimal exploitation of mineral resources to underpin broad-based sustainable growth and socio-economic development. The African Mining Vision Plan took some clusters, 9 clusters. They looked at mining revenues and mineral rent management, geological and mining information systems, building human and institutional capacities, artisanal and small-scale mining, mineral sector governance, research and development, environmental and social issues, linkages and diversification, mobilization of mining and infrastructure investment. Today we'll be concentrating on linkages and diversification, but we'll be touching on all these parameters. So on the front of mineral policy investment, our policies must be sufficiently competitive in a global context. And the policy must be considered fair and equitable by both government and citizens as adequate compensation for the development and extraction of the country's mineral assets. One way to encourage investments is deduction of exploration expenses. And we need to try as much as possible to minimize administrative bureaucracies in the granting of our mining licenses, remove the political influence in granting mining licenses, and also Ghana should benchmark its policies with minerals endowed countries. So a guy called Alan French did a study, and he took a hypothetical gold mine with a capital cost of about $300 million. Weighted average cost of capital, 10%, development term, 3 years, and so on. And he said, if I put this mine in various countries, South Africa, Chile, Brazil, and so on, what is the average effective tax rate? As you can see, Ghana is about 66.5%. South Africa, about 36.3%. These are all the taxes, royalties, and so on. So when an investor is looking at this, where should I place my capital if I'm going to pay 66.5% into taxes? Naturally, there are other considerations, strategic and so on. So this is real. And then the country of Niger took this study and said, where do we place? Because we want to enhance our policies. They realized that apart from Ghana, they were at the very bottom end. And therefore, they are using this to refine their policies to attract investments. So this is real modeling. Then I look at perception. What do mining executives and investors think of Ghana? Perception. So I took a Fraser Institute survey. Unfortunately, it didn't come out well. But out of 90 countries, the policy perception index put Ghana at 51. Not in the first half. 51. Why is that? So I said, let me take it further. Let me look at the mineral potential index. What are they saying? 17. Strong. So the strong geological, the investors perceive Ghana has strong geological potential. If you take the weighted average of mineral potential and policy, Ghana is still placed around the first half. But we need to do something on the policy front. Now, talking about policy fronts, how do we become competitive on the supply dynamics? I'm calling for the assessment of Ghana's minerals potential under the auspices of Minerals Commission. Ghana is very explored, but we still have a long way to go. And therefore, there's the need to engage resources from this very institution, the Ghana Geoscience, Accra Mining Network, and so on, to help assess Ghana's mineral potential. We need to develop a comprehensive knowledge of Ghana's mineral resources, inventory, based on statutory reporting codes, not just quoting numbers. These numbers comply to international standards, JOC, National Instrument 43101 of Canada, SAMREC of South Africa, and when we get to WAIMM's code for West Africa, we can include that as well. The Minerals Commission is to serve as a one-stop shop for all and most current geological and mining data. I say this because I talk to investors who come into the country, and there's a bit of confusion between the Ghana Geological Survey Department and the role of the Minerals Commission. We need to have a real look, whether it's a restructure or alignment, because it's creating confusion in the market. Now, the data will represent the basis for long-term assessment of mineral resource availability and ensure investor attractiveness. What I've done then is to look at exploration funds allocation across the world. In 2017, the key mineral resource countries in the developed world, Canada attracted 14%, Australia 14%, the United States 8%. With a huge mineral resources in Africa, West Africa, only 6% of funds were coming into West Africa. In Southern Africa was even worse, at 2%. So, do we maintain the current status quo and say, let's wait and see, they will come, or do something different? And therefore, I'm going to recommend drastic measures. We need to form a government mining exploration company to work alongside the Minerals Commission. And the sole purpose of this is to de-risk exploration blocks to inferred indicated resources category. And for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to call it Minerals Development Ghana. We need to properly resource this company with a clear mandate of de-risking exploration blocks and inviting domestic and international investors. And the key question, how do we fund this project, this company? The strategy is to recoup the taxpayers-funded exploration programs by attracting investors. Let me tell you, we spent about 12 million doing one project in copper. When we invited investors at the entry fee, it was more than 4 times that number. So that money was returned to government. More than 4 times, because the project is de-risked and it has indicated resource which we can value. This company, if it's to run properly, has to have a competent board, not politicians, but expertise in mining to oversee the management of the company. And all the geological work has to be backed up by supply-demand dynamics to ensure that we are competitive in regional and global markets. This company called Minerals Development Ghana will also evaluate value addition initiatives. We have potential iron ore. What can we use? What can we use for steel? Manganese is exported. We can look at manganese alloys. Salt, massive resource in the country. We can look at caustic soda, soda ash, and so on. Minerals Commission doesn't have the capacity and the resources to be doing everything. And therefore, the need for this company to work alongside Minerals Commission. This company will evaluate the regional availability of minerals that are not available in Ghana. An example, Togo has huge resources of phosphate. Ghana will have the energy, and we can go into arrangements with Togo to bring the phosphate into Ghana and use them for fertilizers. Do you know how much money the government subsidizes fertilizer? And this is a win-win situation for Ghana and Togo. We get the fertilizer, we export to regional markets. This company will also attract innovations and technology and develop capabilities. A few weeks ago, the CEO of a mining company came to see me that they want me to get involved with a project, and the project is ocean mining of copper. I thought it was just a dream. Then he showed me pictures of that, pictures that the ship has already been built. They've raised 500 million out of 800 million capex. Then I took him seriously. Then he showed me pictures of the core shed in where I live, Brisbane. When you go back to Brisbane, go and have a look. So I started taking him seriously. A few days ago, I talked to one of the members of WAIMM about this, and he said, Henry, there is that potential in Ghana. There's a gold belt that has the potential for ocean mining. This company, if set up, can look at all these research and technology to develop our resources in oceans, whether it's sea, anywhere. It can also create jobs and contribute to GDP. So this is something for consideration. In parallel, we are not saying don't invite the investors, but we should set the framework for other investors to come in. And this company will help Minerals Commission to map out pre-approved blocks based on minerals type and delineate them into investment-ready blocks. What I mean is these blocks have all the licenses bundled upfront with all the requisite government approvals, so that when the investor comes in, he's not going to go through all these administrative bureaucracies. And it enables them to bypass all the government administrative bureaucracies and attract investors in the country. We also need to look at creating economic zones with incentives for mineral development. Recently, I heard of the discovery of lithium. This company can take it on, do the initial exploration, and bring in investors. The advantage of this is you can do the status quo and let investors come in first, but then they have strong bargaining power because they have put in the exploration funds. If the government company does it to a stage, these are the terms of the investor coming in, and it maximizes the value for government. So we've talked about the supply strategy. How do we create value in projects? When you discover the mineral, you do concept studies, pre-feasibility studies, detailed feasibility studies, and commissioning. And as you go through all this, you are adding value to your project. I was invited to South Africa, and this company had done exploration. No pre-feasibility study. They have a bankable feasibility study showing the banks. When I started punching holes in their mine plan, they could have looked at a number of options at a pre-feasibility study stage, but they didn't do that, and they struggled to attract funding. So it is important that you take these steps very seriously. And while you're doing that, I'll give you an example. When the company was listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, the share price was 10 cents. When they made their first discovery, the share price jumped to about $1.40. And then market dynamics started coming down. When they announced construction, it started going up. When they announced that they made the first shipment of concentrate, the share price went to an all-time high of $1.60. So that's the beauty of trying to ensure that you do the proper steps in your projects. Again, miners are not price takers. We are price takers, we are not price makers. Prices are dictated by market dynamics. And therefore, you see these commodity prices in a cyclical manner. So the focus should be on alleviating pressure through cost reductions. Now, this chart didn't come up well, but if you are in the third, fourth quartile around this time, this is for gold, and gold prices drop to 1,000, those companies around this side will struggle to survive. If it goes in the first, second quartile, that will be sustainable. So it is important that you bring your projects back to the first, second quartile. I have the privilege to audit a mine plan of a company in the United States. And when I finished the auditing, I had lunch with the CEO of the company. And I told him, you are in trouble. There are technical, smart mining engineers and geologists. Nobody is looking at the position of the company on the global commodity cost curve. When I looked at that, it was in the third quartile. Prices were good, they didn't care. We gave them strategies to move from third quartile to second quartile over a 9-month period. Within a year, the price of that product had deteriorated by about 60%. If they had not put in those strategies, they would have been unsustainable. So it is important that whatever you do, you try and position your project in the first and second quartile. Infrastructure is key. And I always use Mozambique as an example. During the Civil War, no infrastructure was developed. There are billions of tons of coal sitting in the ground. And as I told a friend yesterday, if you have resources in the ground and you cannot mine it economically, it's nothing. After the Civil War, they revised their mining policies. Valley from Brazil built a railway line, thousands of kilometers, and it has unlocked billions of tons of coal in Mozambique. In the context of Ghana, we cannot afford to be tracking bauxite, manganese. It's not sustainable in the long term. We need to fix our railway line. We need to fix the material handling at the ports to make our bauxite, manganese, potential iron ore more competitive in global markets. There's a chart of examples, but it didn't come up well. But the point I was trying to make here is companies like BHP, who have the entire solution, mine, rail, port, are in the lowest cost quartile. And when prices fall, they push volumes to increase their margins because they have their whole solution. There are situations where government builds a railway line, it's operated by a third party, and there is a tolling fee arrangement. So there are models out in the world that we can look at for Ghana. Now let's come to project funding. When an investor is coming into Ghana, the first thing he does is country check. What is the political risk? What is the ease of doing business? What is the business risk? And what is the regulatory framework? To our credit, we are politically stable, we have institutions, and so on. So they will look at it as first pass. And then they will look at the company. So let's take Minerals Development Ghana, for instance. What is their track record in health, safety, and environment? What are they doing in corporate social responsibility? What is their project economics? They will also look at the financial capabilities. What is your cash position? Because if this company is going to take 70% equity and you have 30% equity, it means you need to contribute 30% of the capital. So they need to be comfortable. You have the balance sheet to be able to afford your payment. They look at the managerial competence and they look at reputation risk. So if minerals development Ghana is bulldozing villages and fighting with villages, it's a reputational risk. So investor will not invest in the project. If the shareholders are involved in fraud, it also poses reputational risk. Then they look at the asset itself. What is the net present value? What is the project rate of return? What is the payback period? If I give this money, when do I get my money back? What is your position on the global commodity cost curve? They look at the technical side, the infrastructure, the mine life, the resources and reserves, the mine planning, and so on. And they look at the stage of entry. The earlier you come in, the lower you pay. If you come in at an early stage exploration, you don't pay much. But if you do your pre-feasibility studies and bankable feasibility studies, they come in at a premium. And then they look at the regulatory permits. You have the environmental permit, for instance. You have the mining lease. If not, why should I put the money in and wait for 5 years for you to get your mining license? So all these are the things that the investor looks at. So how do you go out looking for these investors? Once you do your project, you put it in an information memorandum. And that's a summary of your project, the economic and technical viability, your position on the global cost curve, your execution plan, expansion options, project schedule and critical path, organizational and legal structure, all in one document. You cover your risks and mitigation strategies, the key investment highlights, opportunity and transactions, and if you don't have the expertise, appoint a transaction advisor, an investment banker, to lead you into the process. And what are the triggers to attract funding? Your resources reserves have to comply to proper international standards, quality assurance and quality control. It has to have robust economics, potential for expansion, proximity to infrastructure is key, your regulatory permits and social license approvals, competent management team, offtake agreements, and the solution for utilities and logistics. With this, I turn to how do we fund indigenous Ghanaians to participate in the development of the mining sector. In fact, the UNDP recommendation on a paper that they did on alignment of African mining vision with Ghana's policy framework, talked about financial institutions and pension funds to invest in mining. Do we have it now? I don't think so. This was done in 2015. I encourage our colleagues in the investment sector here to establish mining research desks and employ our geologists, mining engineers, metallurgists, and so on to help them understand the risks and reward of investing in the mining sector. And a few weeks ago, I had a call from South Africa to sit on the advisory board of a mining fund that has been recently set up. And this fund seeks to take advantage of the high growth potential of mining opportunities within the South African region. And it's unlocking value by improving efficiencies in mining operations and logistics. It develops economically viable mineral resources that can contribute to sustainable socio-economic growth in respective communities by creating jobs and improving mining sector equity participation by locals. It is stimulating the mining industry by developing capital towards attractive mining opportunities, providing management and technical expertise to assets into which they invest. So if you come with your project and you say you want 100 million, you have to make sure you are a competent team. If the project is robust, they will help you fill positions and help you with a technical team. They provide important logistics support for exports and provide access to market and long-term offtake agreements. I don't think you can see this properly, but they have their own thresholds. Target return is 20% rate of return. That means your project should have an IRR of 20%. Currently, they have 5 billion rands into the fund, which is about just over $400 million. The fund term is 8 to 10 years, and the minimum capital commitment for a project is 50 million Omani rands. So your project should be $4 million or more, and other factors. So the point I'm trying to make is we can do it locally. And we need to engage, and this is one of the challenges I'm going to give one, to engage pension funds and the investment banking sector to do a fund management, principally to support local entrepreneurs. When a funding company comes to you and they say, we can fund your projects, just as they will do due diligence on your projects, you should also conduct due diligence on them, because some of them are fraud. So, you have to look at the source of funds and their shareholders. I'm telling you this from experience. The company approached me that they want to fund projects in Africa. And they gave me all the criteria. When we started doing the due diligence, we realized that one of them had been charged with money laundering. So you need to make sure that you go through a thorough due diligence process. Some of the red flags. If a company that says it's going to fund your project asks you for money to come and do site visits and conduct due diligence, then there's something wrong. So you need to look at that. What are the funding terms? Can you comply with the payment terms? What is the interest rate? What is their track record in funding mining projects? And are they coming in as equity or debt? You have to look at all these parameters. With this, let me take you through the jobs creation that comes out of mining, especially in Ghana. In a study that was done by the IFC, they looked at indirect jobs that come out of mining. And what they realized is in Ghana, for every one job created in the mining industry, it induces 28 other jobs, compared with 7 in Chile, US 5, Scotland 2.5. The challenge for us is, when are we going to get another Newmont to create these jobs? Another Asanko or Goldfields? That's the challenge that Ghana has. And therefore, that's the reason why I spelled out that we should try and de-risk some of our blocks to attract these international players. Now, what we do with the domestic entrepreneurs? My advice is, when we go out to invite players, we specifically say preference to domestic players. So the domestic players go out if they don't have the capital or the operational excellence to bring the international investors. So it gives the domestic players the bargaining power. If you do it the other way around, the investor comes in and is trying to partner with the domestic player, they bully them, the commercial terms, and so allow the domestic players to have the say and strong bargaining powers. So with all what we have, how do we market Ghana? Number one, we have a huge market opportunity in Africa and Europe. We have matured mineral resources sector in gold, diamond, bauxite, and manganese, and other minerals. We have the port. The NPP government is trying to fix the real solution. We have a very well renowned mining university, the University of Mines and Technology, and other universities. We have the mine management expertise. We have Ghanaians occupying very high positions in all the mines in Ghana and overseas. We have highly trained operators in Ghana. We have international mining companies in Ghana, Newmont, Goldfields, and so on. We have well-established institutions, Minerals Commission, EPA. But we need to go further and think outside of the box and see what we can do to improve the attractiveness to the mining sector. And therefore, I look at the UNDP report, which was made in 2015, which made a number of recommendations to Ghana. Now let's do a check on what has been accomplished. They said there is the need to diversify the minerals production base in the country. They said diversification should be promoted to eliminate enclave economic phenomena. They said tax and investment incentives for local capital in mining and projects that add value to raw materials. They also recommended the advocacy for financial institutions and pension funds to invest in mining projects. How many of these have we achieved? And therefore, one of the challenges in the country is implementation. What we have done in Oman, say, talk, nothing happens. So the government says they have adopted an implementation support and follow-up unit. And these are people that have been seconded from private institutions and government institutions, locked in a room to make sure that projects happen. They address gaps and bottlenecks affecting project implementation. All companies are supposed to submit their mining projects and identify the status and the constraints. Then they lock people up for 6 weeks. It's called workshops and labs. And they invite people from the ministries, private sector, academia, civil society. And the focus is on strategies to increase mining's contribution to GDP, increasing investments and creating more jobs. These labs aim to build trust, integration, and partnership between government, private sector, and society. There is a ministerial oversight. All the labs have been completed for tourism, manufacturing, fishing. Mining is in progress as I speak. And all companies have submitted their projects. What they'll do is, if all these projects materialize, what is the economic contribution to the country, GDP? And they use that as a focus to drive and get projects done. With this, what are some of the ongoing initiatives in Ghana? The first one I'll touch on is the Competitive Suppliers Development Program, which is the African Mining Development Center initiative, and is aimed at creating and sustaining a network of competent, reliable, and competitive suppliers to provide goods and services. And there are 3 complementary stages: building capacity, scaling up capabilities, and improving the competitiveness of suppliers. There was an implementation workshop that some of you attended in October 2017. As I understand it now, the Minerals Commission is developing a new local content policy to address any shortcomings and gaps with a view to improving the local content law, including establishment of industry-led enterprise development center. And one of the experts is in this room, Mr. Clifford WAIMM. So, Ghana is making progress. The professor talked about value addition. A workshop was organized in December, which I attended, and that workshop identified areas along the value chain with greater potential for value addition in the extractive sector. We looked at public policy, legal and regulatory environment. There were lessons from various experts from a regional perspective, and we talked about bauxite and alumina. Prof, unfortunately, we haven't received our copies of the report, so we hope that you can present it to us. With this, and Prof talked about bauxite alumina, so I'm going to spend some few minutes on that. I'm just giving you a typical layout of an alumina plant. You see the bauxite coming in. You see various inputs, lime, caustic soda, water. There is a crushing, milling. It goes through a digestion process, precipitation, calcination, and then you get the alumina. There are three elements. The bauxite, very critical. I was invited to South America to look at investing $500 million into a project. And then I went to the board and I secured $1 million for due diligence. The chairman of the company got so frustrated with me because I was concentrating on the bauxite, not the alumina plant. And the reason for that is if the bauxite is wrong, whatever you've done in the alumina is wrong. The first thing I did was look at this geological report. And some historical exploration had been done. Somebody, a consultant, has put it all together. And it says they have 75 million tons of bauxite in one concession and about 150 in another concession. And it identified the chemistry. So I told him, in recent times, and because of things that have happened in the past, I need your resource to be reviewed by a competent geologist under the JOC code, or a qualified geologist under the Canadian code. So he invited a geologist to look at it. And the geologist developed a roadmap to get it complied. And that required $2 million of funding. So he called me up and he says, we have a problem. This geologist says we need to do A, B, C, D, E, and it's going to be cost me $2 million. Will you pay for it? And I said, don't go that route yet. Give me the permission to drill 8 holes over your concession. I want to check the chemistry. I want to take samples through representative holes. When the results came, he was in shock. The silica levels so high. The chemistry didn't match what was in the report. So, if I had gone ahead and invested shareholders' money of $500 million into the project, I would be standing here right now. I would be in jail for causing financial loss to the state. So the bauxite is key. Then the element that is also key is the energy. Now, all these processes, digestion, requires energy. If it's gas-based energy, you need to know the quantity and the price, because that drives the economics. There's a big animal sitting here called red mud, the bauxite waste. And they treat it, it's all red, calculated well. And there are 3 things that you can do. We have a closed cycle disposal system, which is a dam, the bauxite is dumped in a secured large inland artificial ponds, known as lagoons. We have the direct disposal into the sea, which the environmentalists don't like at all. And then we have the dry disposal method, which is the wet slurry undergoes several stages of filtration and water is separated from it. After that, the dry mud is then disposed of as pyramids or dumped at the pond site. So there are examples in the world that we can look at. The next key thing is the technology selection, because the main driver is the content of your aluminum oxide and water, which we call boehmite, the boehmite contents. It determines the technology and type of technology that you use. There are 3 types. The high temperature digestion technology, which processes bauxites with boehmite content of more than 10% at 270 degrees. There's the medium temperature digestion technology, which processes bauxite with boehmite content at 4% at 140 degrees. And then there's the double digestion technology, which processes bauxite between 5 to 10% at 2 temperatures, 140 and 270. Why is this important? It's because you have to ensure that the technologies are proven, they are available, and they are bankable, key, because otherwise the banks will not fund it. And there are suppliers of technology, Tinto Alcan, Hatch, Autotech, Uli Parsons, Hydro, and some of the Chinese. But then you have to develop your own criteria. In our case, we have about 40 items that we sent to them to have a look. And our selection was based on the responses to these 20 items. I keep on saying economics, economics, economics. When we did our study, We were on the third quartile, and this is a graph that I showed the ministers and the board. Why we need to move ourselves in the first quartile. And the only way to do that was to ensure that energy price was competitive. So when you are in the first quartile, like Mardin, Saudi Arabia, the reason why they are in the first quartile is they have the entire solution: bauxite, rail, alumina plants, and other logistics. Even if the bauxite is not that good, they are able to import some and blend. It is important that you are in the lowest quartile because it makes you viable. When you are in the second quartile, it's still good. You're profitable, and future investments will maintain your low-cost position. When you're in the third quartile, you are at risk, and you need to invest to shift yourself to quartile 1 or quartile 2, or you can operate until you're no longer profitable when prices collapse. Fourth quartile is what we call a dead zone. Don't do it, you're destroying value. Because your project will close when prices fall and will never reopen again. So we need to take this seriously. So what are the key success factors in a bauxite alumina plant? Establishing the resource base in accordance with proper quality assurance and quality control reporting systems. Your rail and port material handling for competitive FOB costs. Competitive energy price for your alumina plant. Optimize capacity. This is very important. In our case, or if you have an aluminum plant that is producing 400,000 tons, the ratio of alumina to aluminum is 2:1. It means you have to have an alumina production of 800,000 tons. When we did our study, it wasn't economic. So, do we build a plant just to service our aluminum plant? And that scenario, that it didn't work. So we needed to scale it up to about 2 million tons to make it economically justifiable. And therefore, we had to look at the supply-demand dynamics in the region and have a market penetration strategy. So you need to look at that also. The other factors, sustainable red mark disposal options, because the NGOs and environmentalists can give you a hard time. And they can frustrate your project if you don't get it right. Choice of technology, partner selection, very key. A partner with a financial management capabilities. Now, one of my board members told me, why don't you go and hire the best people in the world? Why do you need Rio Tinto, for instance? I said, I can do that. But I need Rio Tinto because they have the track record. They have the systems. I don't have to reinvent systems. They have the reputation. And moreover, they are part of the project. They are putting equity interest in the project. When we take all the boxes, aluminium plant, over $2 billion, oversubscribed, the banks were pushing us. I was getting calls every day. Can we look at your project? So the funding becomes easy when you tick all the boxes. With this, what is the role of West Africa Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum in all this? I attended presentations here and I never saw a representative of this institution. So I called the president. Why are you not getting involved? So lectures like this, the Accra Mining Network, the Ghana Geoscientists, they do all these lectures. You are doing a fantastic job in breaking awareness to people on the challenges facing the mining sector. You are collaborating with stakeholders, and I can see a number of stakeholders here. The financial institutions is here, the Ghana Chamber of Mines CEO is here, Minerals Commission, Ghana Institution of Geoscientists, as representatives of the University of Mines and Technology, and so on. We need to take it further. Let's go to Parliament. Let's go and meet the Mining and Energy Committee and educate them on the challenges facing the sector and how they can help us with legislation. We also need support for government initiatives on sustainable mining in Ghana, especially in the areas of mine reclamation, safety and environmental compliance, and technical support. Last year, I challenged the Ghana Geoscientists to develop an online geographical information systems for the Ghana Geological Survey Department. Operational improvement, support to the Ghanaian mining industry. We have all the expertise in this institution, mining engineers, metallurgists, geologists, and so on. We should also be visible in community engagement and acting as referees between mining companies and communities. skills development and knowledge sharing through technical bulletins and conferences. We are very smart professionals. Let them publish their innovations, their thinking into a technical bulletin and share it with the rest of Africa. We need to project Ghana hard because we have the expertise. We need to conduct quarterly meetings at the workplace and engage our professionals and share knowledge. So I'm going to give you some action plans, my wish list. I'm going to challenge this institution to develop a strategy for detailed exploration and mineral potential assessment, including a budget and timeline. I'm also going to challenge you to develop a strategy framework for Minerals Development Ghana, you can change the name, on how it can de-risk exploration blocks and attract domestic and international partners. We are also going to look at areas of cooperation in the sub-region, including Ethiopia. Why is Ethiopia included? Because we have a guest of honor who is the ambassador designate to Ethiopia in our presence. Technical exchanges, research in technology and innovations, and then come up with implementation timeline. I had the opportunity to witness a presentation at the Accra Mining Network where some of them went into Ethiopia through a sponsored facility. And the learnings from that experience was incredible. We are also going to start the process of a mining fund management to help develop local entrepreneurs. And I challenge this organization or institution to develop a business plan and undertake a stakeholders workshop where we bring in the financial institutions, the banks, and the pension funds. With this, I now want to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Amachum, who has just joined us as the guest of honor. Please can you stand? I recall that when I was serving on the Executive Council of the Ghana Association of New South Wales in Australia, then President Kufuor came, and we told him that the Ghanaian population in Sydney in particular was increasing. So there was the need to re-establish the Ghana High Commission in Australia. That responsibility fell on Mrs. Amachum to set up the Ghana High Commission. Since then, me and her have been working on various projects to attract investors into Ghana. In fact, when I lobbied the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy to give scholarships to UMAT, the funds were facilitated through her office, the Ghana High Commission in Australia. But she doesn't know the reason why I invited her here. She's very good in diplomacy, and I'm very good at diplomatic pressure. So her first task is to use her network in Australia, Europe, United States, and other countries to help attract investors into the country. Key performance indicator 2 is to use your high officers to secure grants for WAIMM, Accra Mining Network, and some of these institutions so that they can also conduct research and innovations. I'm not done yet. Number 3. Technical exchange programs between Ethiopia and Ghana. The first one that I saw from Accra Mining Network was fantastic. Let us also invite them to Ghana. Let's send some of our students and graduates over there to do some learnings. And fourth but not the least, now you have seen her. Anytime you are in Ethiopia and you have challenges, you call on her. Next year, around the same time, we'll call on her to come and report to us on her key performance indicators. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think mine is more of contribution from Prof's delivery and also what Henry told us. I saw the key issue there being cost. And at the end of the day, cost is what drives sustainability. I believe strongly that as a nation, we want to harness our resources and become some of those resource economies like Canada, Australia, South Africa, and others. Now, what these people have done over the years is that they think at the bigger circle when they look at sustainability. The reason why I'm saying this is I just finished a 3 years contract with Mardin Gold. And before I went to Mardin, I was with Goldfields. In Mardin, Saudi Arabia, they have 3 affiliates: aluminium, phosphate, gold, and base metal. I work with the gold base metal, and I just finished their flagship gold project. At the end of the day, we were producing gold around $600 per ounce. That is the cost. Now, before I left Goldfields Takwa, we were doing 900. The last time I checked, they were just under 1,000. So when we're talking about sustainability as a country, it's going to be tough for us. What is the difference here? In Saudi Arabia, fuel is very cheap. You take water, a pint of water is 6 times the cost of fuel. So cost of fuel is nothing. Energy, nothing. When they put all those things in, at the end of the day, like Henry told us, their cost is in the first quarter. Even if they drift a bit, they'll go to the second quarter. Yes. Most of the mining companies in Ghana, we are in the third quarter. And very soon, it will not be even the fourth. Thank you. So we need to look at power. Currently, I was just making some few research. I was told our own gas plant as a country is producing around 9 cents per cubic so. And Nigeria produces at 4.5 cents, half of that. To start with, we are not going to compete in the sub-region. So we need to begin to look at the infrastructure as a government to see how we can make life very, very, great for the investors. Otherwise, we're not going to go far. We can talk about a project, but beyond project, there's something we call operation. And operation is what brings the sustainability. So projects, we can take off, but we've seen projects that have lasted for only a year or two. Those of you coming from Takwa, one day Takwa woke up only to hear that one of the greatest mining companies had to fold up. Okay? Just because they couldn't sustain the operation after all the money they spent in the project. So it's critical that we do our fundamental jobs very well and provide first-class facilities to sustain the industry. Thank you.
In Henry's presentation, he referenced the PwC research about profitability or the failure factors of a mining corporation, and he attributes about 92% to management factor. You were giving us a hypothetical model as of the Ghana mining development or something, where you're talking about the way forward. In recent developments, we see that most of the multinational mining corporations are resorting to what they call, I think, agency mining or something, where they are outsourcing the exploration to sub-companies to take it up. And they are attributing that to cost factor and efficiency. I don't see that in tandem with the model that you are proposing. How do you marry the two? Thank you.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Georgette, and I run a mine support service company, and I'm also the president for Accra Mining Network and the Women in Mining in Ghana. My contribution is, it all looks very good. We have the experts. I've met a lot of Ghanaian experts all over the world. I think that, I'm hoping that we do more developing local support companies, local suppliers, because when we do that, we create the supporting jobs. We do not want to come again, ending up with a lot of inputs and supplies from elsewhere. As Henry said, we were at the local supplier development program with assets and African Mining Vision. So I think that it's very important that that aspect of all these projects is developed so that Ghanaians, we are not sitting there waiting for just the taxes. People want to work. We want to work, we want to be part of it. And so it's all very well having these consultants come in, but it's important that whatever inputs are going through, and some of these inputs are cross-industry. They're cross-industry, but we keep importing. In my own business, it's not my joy to import all the time. But for you to set up manufacturing, it takes a lot. Even to invite a foreign manufacturer to come in and work with you, they're going to ask you, do you have a contract with this company? Where are the contracts? Where are the purchase orders? So we need government to come in and bring, some of us are ready to work together, but we need the support. when we create these industries in Ghana, it's not just for Ghana, it's for Mali, it's for Niger, it's for Burkina Faso, it's for Togo, it's for even Nigeria, which is coming up really tops on solid metals. So that's what I want to speak about, creating supplier capabilities and the linkages, and looking for the suppliers, looking at the West African market, even the African market. Thank you.
Congratulations, you never disappoint. I think the key points I wanted to bring across essentially has to do with what do we want out of the mineral resources we have, and particularly in this case, bauxite, our bauxite resources. I know we say we want to do an integrated, bauxite aluminium industry, but the key question is, do we want it for development or we want it just for rent? And that has been our bane generally. That when we are talking about the contributions of the industry, our focus generally goes into rent. But then if you look at all the opportunities around the industry, and it's not just bauxite, even the gold mining industry, diamond mining industry, manganese mining industry, have we done the kind of mappings that are required? You don't wait till the end. We need to start the sensitization. Communities by this time, engaging them. You really have to manage expectations. Now, what are the inputs required? Some are cross-cutting. Caustic soda is key. I saw it in the presentation. You use same for the gold mining industry. You use some for the laundry products manufacturing industry as well. Have we started looking at these numbers? I think it's so critical because my heart bleeds. Why should we be importing caustic soda, for example? So I think we need to step back and say, yes, we want to do exploration and but at the end of the day, there are other linkage opportunities we have to be working on in tandem. Otherwise, by the time you finish your exploration, you realize that the kind of sensitization you should have done with the communities is long past. The kind of engagements you should be having with manufacturers and all the linkages around it, before you realize, we say, oh, we can't develop the capacity and therefore let's import. We have learned our lessons over the years, and I think that we should do things differently. Thank you.
I'm Festus at Adequacy. I'm a member of WAIMM. I'm a small-scale gold miner. Mr. Henry, I think you know much about small-scale mining, since you are coming from Accra, or you come from Accra. For the past 1 year, this sector has been there's been a memorandum moratorium placed on this sector for the past 1 year. We are not working the party that we are doing at the moment. There's no solution also coming. By the way, we have school of mines here, or the investor of mines here. We do a lot of research. A lot of research around that in this particular area of small scale mining. Nobody is contacting them. We don't know whoever is bringing the solution. I have my hands here. There's a document here called Multi-Sectorial Mining Integrated Project. This document should have been upgraded somewhere even before this year, but nothing is happening. They have all the solutions, they have everything, but nothing is happening. We don't know who is going to solve the problem for now. But I think the small scale mining industry, since we are talking about employment generation, I think it's one area that employment is being generated. So, Mr. Henry, I think you can, with your experience, I wish to tell you, or I wish to express to you that take your good office or your profession to our big men here, help them to solve this problem for us. That is why I'm here. Thank you.
When we say a company is established, it doesn't mean that a company puts in all the human resources to do the work. In our instance, we engage contractors and consultants, but somebody has to oversee the management of the project. So you can outsource, whether it's a contractor, consultant, whoever. This company sets the criteria for selection. What are the key elements? Industry expertise, ability to deliver, mobilization quickly, and so on and so forth. So this minerals development of Ghana that I'm proposing will be the facilitator of those projects. They put in the right expertise at the very top level, and that expertise actually decides which contractors and consultants to bring in. Now, because it's a government-held company, they have to abide by strict corporate governance. You can't just go and choose Mr. Peter as a contractor. You have to go through a proper process whereby your selection criteria and the deliverables are all advertised in the newspapers for participants to come in. So you can do whatever you want, but you have to go through a proper corporate governance structure. And you need key people, geologists, mining engineers, and so on, to manage the process. That's what I meant. It doesn't mean that we're going to have a huge resources of people doing the work themselves. I haven't seen the document that you are holding. I'll interact with you and have a copy, and then we can develop some strategies. And then we use this institution, WAIMM, to solve the problem. Georgette, my sister, talked about local content. The good news, and Clifford is here, maybe he can comment more on that, is there's a committee that has been set up to look at the current local content laws and find the gaps and challenges to address that. I talked to Clifford, and maybe Clifford, you can comment a little bit more on that. As part of that, there's also the industry-led enterprises leadership training that is being discussed by the Minerals Commission. So I think there are policies in place to address some of your concerns. The other challenge is the attraction of foreign investors, and I'm glad that my senior brother Bash and his colleagues are all setting up mining companies. You need to invite some of us to participate in your, so that you don't take all the money. He talked about spending millions of dollars, and these are risk money because there's no guarantee that you can find an ore body that is commercially and technically viable. So what we tend to do is to phase the exploration programs. He said, how many holes? Only 6 holes. Now imagine that if you have drilled 20 holes, 30 holes. So as engineers and geologists, we plan and we phase these projects. We go phase 1, and there's a milestone. If you don't find nothing, that's your risk money. You stop. In the example that I gave you when I looked at somebody's alumina project, all I spent was the first 200,000 on few holes to check the chemistry, and then we stopped there. So Bart was making a comment that it is very expensive. Exploration is very expensive. And therefore, if we sit and we say we'll get government or we'll get investors to come in and explore our country for us, maintain the current status quo, we'll be sitting there, our geologists will be coming out of university with no jobs. So let's think outside of the box, do things. It doesn't mean you go and spend all time space money. Before you put a drill on the ground, you would have done a lot of geophysics, geochemistry, done all the mapping, geological reconnaissance, and so on. If it doesn't look prospective, you don't go and put drills down because drilling is your last resort in exploration. It's very expensive. So I think we are moving in the right direction, but the challenge we have is implementation. And therefore, we need to, in fact, I've had about 10 proposals coming up. Let's do this, let's do this. You go to all these meetings, you fly from Australia to Ghana, nothing materializes. So let's make sure that we get implementations right, the front-end engineering is done properly, and this country will move ahead. Thank you very much.